I was locking the diner when I saw a little girl in a wheelchair sitting in the rain, shivering so hard I could hear her teeth knocking through the glass. And for 1 second I told myself it couldn't be real at midnight in Chicago. It was real. And once you see something like that, you can't unsee it, you know what I mean. 14 hours on my feet, mop water colder than the wind outside, neon buzzing over the window, like it was losing the fight. And there she was, small and soaked, and stuck one wheel wedged deep in a pothole like the city itself had decided to hold her in place. I didn't think I moved. I threw my coat on without finding the buttons, pushed through the door, and let the cold slap me awake. "Hey, sweetheart," I called, keeping my voice soft so I didn't spook her. "Let's get you inside. We'll wait for your dad together, okay?" She flinched when I touched the chair like someone had taught her to expect the worst, and I swear to you, my heart split but kept beating anyway. Inside, I parked her in the booth by the radiator, the seat I saved for myself on bad nights, wrapped a towel around her shoulders, and did the one thing my grandma taught me when the world feels mean. I cooked butter in the pan until it sang bread on the griddle, sharp cheddar melting like sunlight, chicken noodles steaming hot, a handful of crackers because it makes anybody feel special, even if it's just soup. "Is this for me?" she whispered, eyes wide like the plate was a magic trick, and I said, "All yours," sliding a napkin across the table like I was presenting a crown. "I'm Maya," I told her. "What's your name?" And she said, Lily, almost too quiet to hear over the rain hammering the window. Pattern interrupt. A thought that hit me like a siren. Where was her father? I asked, careful the way you ask a wounded animal to trust you, and she said he'd gone to make a call. He said he'd be right back, and I bit the inside of my cheek so I wouldn't say the wrong thing out loud. If it were you, what would you have done? Would you have believed? That would you have waited? Or would you have felt that hot spike of anger that says no child should be out here alone? We ate first because food is medicine. When words won't work, her first bite pulled a tiny giggle from the corner of her mouth, when the cheese stretched longer than her arms, and for 2 minutes the world made sense again. Then I asked about her mom, and Lily looked down, face thundercloud flat, for one heartbeat. Then it cracked. "She died," she said, and the way she said it told me she'd learned to make that sentence small to be easier for other people. I got up, moved to her side, put an arm around her. "You're allowed to be sad," I told her. "You're allowed to miss her. You're allowed to heal everything." And when she finally let herself cry, those deep, shaking sobs like she'd been holding her breath for a year, I held her slow circles on her back, whispering, "I got you. I got you." Like I was talking to my own boys when they were little. Across the street, a car idled, headlights low, a shape behind the glass, watching. He didn't come in, not yet. A woman did, right at midnight, hoodie that cost more than my rent. Smile too bright to be honest. "I'm here for Lily," she said. "Her dad sent me, and maybe you would have handed the girl over and finished closing early. Maybe you wouldn't." Me, I planted myself between them and said, "She doesn't know you, and I made that woman call the father." A man answered with a voice that sounded like it lived in corner offices and private planes, controlled, careful, expensive. "My name is Marcus Blackwood," he said. "Lily is my daughter," and I didn't let him finish. "Then where were you?" I asked, because I was angry and tired and done with polite. Silence. Then a quieter voice working, which isn't an excuse, it's just the truth. He said his assistant had full clearance, said Lily would be safe, and I looked at that little face next to me, already calmer now that she wasn't alone, and I hated every option in front of me, but I let her go. I hugged her tight enough to promise without words. "If you ever need anything, come back here. I'm here every day." And she nodded into my shoulder like she wanted to stay forever. I locked up, tried to count the register, failed because my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Then came the knock. Softer this time. Hesitant. I opened the door just enough to keep control, and there he was, soaked through. Suit, ruined hair, plastered to his forehead, eyes rimmed red like he'd cried in private, and hoped I couldn't tell. "I wanted to thank you," he said, voice lower now, "less armor for what you did for Lily." I told him I'd done what any decent human should do, he said. I'd done what he should have done, and then he reached into his jacket and placed a heavy cream envelope on the counter. "This is a thank you and an apology," he said, "and a job offer. Director of Community Relations at my company, starting salary 180, full benefits, and a signing bonus." I laughed. I won't lie right in his face because it felt like he was trying to buy forgiveness with zeros. He didn't get mad. He said, "It's not pity, it's me admitting I forgot how to see people. You saw my daughter tonight. I need help learning that again." I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I called my best friend Rosa after he left. She said, "I'm putting on pants, put coffee on, because real friends show up before you decide who you are next." 2 weeks later, I walked into a lobby that smelled like money and new granite badge around my neck, like a dare receptionist smiling with her mouth and not her eyes. And I told myself to keep my shoulders square, not today, not after everything. The PR director, Diane, gave me the tour, like she was checking boxes, the VP of marketing. Brad shook my hand too long and said my name like he was practicing possession. We sat in a conference room that could have paid my bills for a year, and Brad asked what made me qualified. 15 years of listening to people no one hears. I said 15 years of reading rooms and faces and fear, 15 years of making strangers feel seen, and he smiled the way a cat smiles at a fish tank. "So waitressing," he said, and I could have soft-pedaled, but I didn't. "Community isn't a press release," I told him, "it's people. And if you're making decisions about neighborhoods you've never set foot in, your donations are just PR, not partnership." The air in that room changed. You could feel it. That's when Marcus walked in. He didn't take the head seat. He pulled out the chair next to mine and sat, and the whole room recalibrated without anyone admitting it. "Unconventional is why she's here," he said. "We've been an echo chamber too long. We built fast and messy and real job training that ended in actual offers, scholarships for kids with disabilities, that covered what insurance forgot, cleanups, that hired local crews instead of flying in volunteers for a photo town halls where we listened before we pitched, where we learned the names of the people our spreadsheets turned into numbers. The press noticed, which meant my coworkers noticed, which meant Brad noticed, standing in doorways with that half grin that says he's not listening while he memorizes the easiest place to put a knife. Yeah, that happened. Then came the twist that flipped everything. HR called me down on a Monday, urgent. Their word, not mine. And I walked into a room with legal and a folder already open to my name. "We have a breach," the lawyer said, voice cool, efficient. "Confidential bid files were accessed and leaked this weekend from your workstation, with your credentials at 2:47 a.m. The Morrison contract, $200 million. Weeks from signature, suddenly wobbling." My mouth went dry. "That's impossible," I said. "I wasn't here. I was home with my son." "You can check the building cameras." "The logs don't lie," she said. "Not unkind, just final." They suspended me on the spot, asked for my badge, and 2 security guards who looked sorry for me walked me through a sea of eyes that pretended not to stare. Outside, I sat on a bench that smelled like wet metal and stale cigarettes, and let the first tear out because there's only so long you can hold your breath. My phone rang, Marcus' voice tight like a guitar string. "Do you know who?" he asked, and the answer came up from my gut. "Brad," I said. "I can't prove it. But I know, and he said he'd bought me 48 hours, that the board wanted me gone and prosecuted, that this was the only shot. If it were you, let me throw that at you straight. What would you have done? Would you have curled up and prayed? Would you have hired a lawyer you couldn't afford? Would you have run, or would you have fought the way your mother taught you to fight, when you're too tired to stand? At 2 in the morning, Vanessa knocked on my apartment door with a leather case and eyes that hadn't slept. "We tore the logs apart," she said. "3 days ago, someone cloned your badge camera, caught Brad in your office at 11 p.m. 18 minutes too long for a lost file, not enough for a nap, but it's still not bulletproof." She opened the case and showed me a recorder the size of a button. "Not for court," she said. "For the board, for the truth. He's arrogant. He'll brag if he thinks he's safe." Marcus stood in my tiny kitchen looking like a sculpture that had seen war. "If he senses something, you walk," he said. "Promise me." I nodded, because brave doesn't mean stupid. It means careful. McGinty's on Wells, Tuesday night. 14. Brad walked in like he owned the wood in the bar, spotted me, hesitated, then slipped into the booth with a face made of concern. I let my voice break out. An act, the break was there. "I'll walk away," I said. "No press, no lawyers. 6-month severance, neutral reference. I just need to pay rent and keep my sons from thinking their mother's a criminal." He watched me over the rim of his glass, then leaned back and let the mask fall. "You're smarter than I gave you credit for," he said. "But I don't need to help you. You're already finished," and then he said it. The poison he'd been saving for dessert. "I protected this company from a diversity hire bleeding cash into social programs. The board needed a scapegoat, and you were perfect. It was almost too easy." He dropped 2 20s on the table like he was tipping a barista and walked out, and I sat very still until my hands stopped shaking enough to text Vanessa. "Got every word," she replied. "Get out now." Mini call to action moment. Stick around, because what happened next will blow your mind. Emergency board meeting at 8 a.m. Chairs that squeak like guilt portraits on the walls of men who never worked a double shift, and me, the waitress turned director, who wasn't supposed to be there anymore, sitting right across from the man who just confessed to burying me. Marcus thanked everyone for coming on short notice, said the evidence used to suspend me was fabricated, nodded to Vanessa, and she pressed play. Brad's voice filled the room, slick and smug. "I protected this company from a diversity hire," and the color drained out of his face like a bathtub with the plug pulled. "That recording is illegal," his lawyer snapped, and the chairman of the board, silver hair, and a stare that could sand wood, said, "This isn't court, this is governance." Legal laid out the badge clone, the camera footage, the VPN tricks, the timing. The chairman looked right at Brad and asked a very old, very simple question. "Did you do this?" Brad tried to rebrand sabotage as stewardship, said he was protecting the company from my programs, said the client didn't like our woke direction, and Diane, the PR director, who'd treated me like a storm cloud on her weather app, stood and said something. "I'll never forget, we failed her," she told the board, voice shaking. "We let bias make us lazy." The vote to fire Brad wasn't close. The call to the FBI happened in another room, but you could feel it like a cold draft under the door. I stood because my legs wouldn't stop trembling if I didn't, and I said, "I want my job back. But not as a favor, as Vice President of Social Impact, with a seat at this table and authority to do the work right." And maybe you think that sounds bold. Maybe you think it sounds like I forgot who I was, but listen, after someone tries to erase you, knowing your value is the only way you walk back in the building with your head up. 11 hands went up. 1 didn't. And just like that, the girl who used to refill coffee without being seen had a vote on what the company did next. Yeah, that happened. Time moved the way it does when you're rebuilding slow and then suddenly. 2 years later, I stood in the back of an elementary school auditorium holding tissues I promised I wouldn't need, watching kids walk or roll or crutch across a stage to collect diplomas they'll lose in a closet and still never forget. And when they called Lily's name, she came to the center with careful steps on four-arm crutches, covered in glitter stickers, took the paper, then turned to the mic. "I want to thank my dad for being here," she said, "and Miss Maya for making me feel like I wasn't invisible. And I didn't try not to cry, not that day." We went to a little Italian spot after red checkered tablecloths, waiter, who called everyone hon, and I watched Marcus listen to his daughter, like the world had finally taught him what mattered. "You saved my life," he said. When Lily went to the bathroom, and I shook my head, "You did the work." And he smiled with his eyes, which is a thing I didn't know could happen until I saw it. 5 years after the rain, we cut a ribbon in my old neighborhood, on a 4-story building, with a mural of hands in every shade. You can imagine the Carter Blackwood Foundation Community Center job training on the first floor, with programs that end in job offers, childcare on the second, because economics are pointless if your kid has no one safe to sit with, a clinic on the third, where a nurse will say you're okay and mean it, and a whole floor for adaptive tech and tutors and sports for kids like Lily used to be. Marcus spoke about profit and purpose being partners, not rivals, and I talked about how money is numbers, but people are names, and we announced the Emily Blackwood Scholarship for students with disabilities because grief can be turned into light if you carry it together. A woman in a fast food uniform hugged me after and said we got her daughter out of a shelter and into college, and I cried again, because if you can't, you're not paying attention. Here's the part that might bother you, and I want you to sit with it. The secret recording saved me. The Billionaire's access saved me. That combination doesn't exist for most people who get framed or fired or pushed out. Do you think that's fair? Do you think ends justify means when the system is designed to grind you down? Or do you think lines matter more than survival? I'm asking for real because we can't fix what we won't say out loud. And here's another question we argue about in rooms with bad coffee and good intentions. Do we put stories like mine on brochures, polish them up until they shine, or do we keep them messy so people remember the cost? I told the board no to the brochure. I told them a win belongs first to the neighborhood that feels it, not to the company that funds it. Some folks loved that. Some didn't. We did it anyway. I still own the diner where it started. Kept the neon, fixed the pothole. Some nights after late meetings, I sit in the booth by the radiator, drink coffee too strong to be polite, and think about how kindness works. How it's a door you walk through without knowing what's on the other side. How it multiplies when you hand it to the next person and say, "Here, this got me through a bad night. Maybe it will help you." My phone buzzes, and it's Lily sending me a photo of her first school dance, or Marcus asking if I'm coming to Sunday dinner, warning I'm attempting lasagna, and I say, "I'll bring dessert and a fire extinguisher," because some jokes never stop being true. So yeah, I was the waitress who fed a little girl in the rain, and a billionaire offered me a job that changed my life, but if you've been listening closely, that's not the whole headline. The headline is this: I changed his life too. Lily changed both of us, and together we changed a few city blocks, which is exactly how the big stuff starts. If it were you, what would you have done that night at the window? Would you have opened the door? Would you have given her your best booth and your last bowl of soup? Would you have worn the recorder? Would you have demanded the board seat? Do you think that's fair, or do you think I crossed a line you can't step back over? Tell me. I want to hear it. Stick around on this channel, because tomorrow I'm telling you about a janitor who made a CEO choke on his own rulebook, and you're not going to want to miss how that ends. If this story hit you anywhere that matters, share it with someone who needs a reason to stop the next time they see a small figure in a storm. Tap subscribe. Hit the bell, drop your city in the comments, and tell me your rain night stories, your unfair fights, your twists. You survived. I'll be there in the comments with you listening, because that's where the next door opens, and I promise when you walk through it, you won't be walking alone.